do. It's season 2. It's in 30, 30, season 2. Hey. Hey, sir. Hey. I don't own no rights to this music. Hey, Dominique. Hey.
Hello. Oh, we jamming tonight. Okay. I see how we do.
Little background music. Hope I don't get sued just by playing it in the background. How are you?
I'm good.
Good to see you. Desmond. Good to see you, Crip community. Welcome. What's up, Janelle? What's going on? Hey, Sana. How are you? Welcome, Crip community. Welcome to 30 at 8:30. Come on in the room, and when you come on in the room and hit share. So good to see you all this evening. What's up, Sean? How you doing, my brother? What's going on? What kind of pies did you make recently? What's up, Megan? How are you? What's up, Terry? I owe you a phone call. I promise, sweetie. I'm so sorry. I just been like, ugh. What's up, Trevon? How are you? Good to see you, Crib community. Good to see you. Come on in the room. When you come on in the room, hit share. Winnie. Yeah, Sean, you got some orders for your pies. I made a brownie pie. Okay. Right? He made a brownie pie. He can throw it out. Yeah. Pecan and his pecan bourbon pie.
I'm putting in my request tonight.
Pecan bourbon pie. It's not a game. It is not a game. What's up? Hey, Christine, how are you? So good to see you. What's up, Shell? What's up, Shelly? How are you? Shelly, did you try that vegetarian Thai dish I told you about? Good stuff happening. What's up, Nadine? How you doing? Crib community, welcome. Listen, I know there is a lot of stuff going on tonight. We got the Raptors game in Toronto. We got the scholar strike going on. So I appreciate you all being here in full effect this evening because this brother right here is not to be missed. He is not a game. And I'm so excited that you could join us tonight, Desmond. Really excited.
Thank you for having me.
Really excited. So before we get started, I want to begin by dedicating tonight's episode to the scholar strike. The scholar strike taking place both here in Canada and in the US, specifically to protest anti-Black racism and police brutality. So this is our teach-in of sorts, our taking of the academic knee, if you will, to really acknowledge the systemic anti-Black racism and continued police brutality of Black and brown bodies. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. So the title of our episode, you pick up what I was putting down? I don't know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the title of our episode this evening is Plugged In, Twitter Fingers versus Trigger Fingers. A bit of a play on words, if you will, from Drake's song Back to Back. Thank you, Alicia and Janelle, for that. So I want to focus on the phenomena that we're seeing relevant to the world being plugged in, bearing witness to the repeated annihilation of Black people through Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. I want to talk about the relevance of the use of social media communication to express our grief, our pain and anguish, and to utilize our Twitter fingers in response to trigger fingers of injustice. I want to talk about the untreated, unacknowledged, collective trauma that pulls the fingers of the trigger of the gun. So I couldn't think of anybody else to have this candid conversation, this fundamental discourse with, than the Dr. Desmond Upton Patton.
Yo, yo, yo. We in here.
You're in here.
You know, a quick note, I have a paper with the exact same title.
Shut up. Are you serious?
The exact same title, absolutely.
See, that's just synergy. I mean, Desmond, we've met in person once, but we got some work to. There's some work we got to do. For real,
absolutely.
For real. Are you? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. All right. Crib community, we are honored to hear from one of the leading scholars in the field of social media communication, Desmond Upton Patton, whose critical research has advanced our understanding of artificial intelligence and social media, particularly as it pertains to the Black community. Dr. Desmond Upton Patton, Associate Dean for Innovation and Academic Affairs, founding director of the SAFE Lab, and co-director of the Justice, Equity, and Technology Lab at Columbia University School of Social Work, is a leading pioneer in the field of making artificial intelligence empathetic, culturally sensitive, and less biased. Through keynote presentations and interactive workshops, Dr. Patton is helping organizations develop a better approach to diversity and inclusion that includes fairer practices that address the challenge of prejudice rather than contribute to it. Also the co-chair of the Racial Equity Task Force at the Data Science Institute and founder of the SIM-ED Tech Incubator at Columbia University, Dr. Patton's research uses virtual reality to educate youth and policymakers about the ways social media can be used against them and how race plays a part. Desmond, Dr.
Hello.
Patton.
Yes.
What's up?
Hey.
I got questions. You ready?
I'm here for them.
You ready? Okay.
I'm ready.
So first thing first. So Crib community can get to know you a little bit better. Why did you choose to focus on artificial intelligence, social media communication, and Black youth specifically in your research?
I have to say, I didn't choose it. It chose me. You know, I think the beauty of being a social worker is that hopefully we listen to community members and we are walking alongside of them and listening and learning from them. And this is exactly what happened to me. I did my PhD in Chicago, and I was studying youth violence with young, high-achieving Black boys from the west side of the city. And they kind of put me on game to what was happening on Twitter. And it was an interesting moment where there were two really well-known rappers who were beefing on Twitter, going back and forth. And then one of them posted their exact location on Twitter. And within 3 hours, he was murdered in that exact location. And so I became really fascinated and saddened by that interaction, and I wanted to learn more. And so, like scholars do, I went to the literature, and there was really nothing there. And so, with my classmates, 2 other Black men from U Chicago, we wrote a paper coining the term "internet not with anymore," but that is the first paper that we wrote about the intersection of social media and gun and gang violence, particularly with young Black men in Chicago.
So powerful when we are called, right? When we are called to serve.
Absolutely.
There's something just different about the vibe of scholars that enter a space with putting the community first. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Really, really, really. So next question, how are social media platforms allowing us to see the impact of the many forms of violence, structural violence, right? Structural inequities, homicide, gang violence, gun violence, that disproportionately affect Black youth. How are social media platforms allowing us to see the impact of the many forms on Black youth?
The phrase that changed my life was I was doing a focus group with young Black men in Chicago, and a young man said, "Facebook is life." And that really shifted how I thought about social media, because I think in the early days, and in my own usage of social media was just this thing that happened to us, right? Mm-hmm. It's this thing that you participate in to connect with classmates and family and friends, to watch some videos, to, right, perhaps a source of news, but it wasn't necessarily reality. But this young man underscored the point that for a lot of folks, there isn't a demarcated line between the physical and the digital. And so it became very clear that social media is actually the new neighborhood or the new community. And what that means is that folks are bringing their whole lives to the social media space, their lived experiences. And that includes a plethora of experiences: love and joy and happiness, pain and sadness and heartache and trauma and grief and loss, all of these things combined. But what I really like about social media is that it allows you to see the multiple selves of individuals in ways that it's harder to get at through a survey or ethnographic interview, because folks, for some reason, are willing to present multiple sides of themselves. Even if it's performative, that is a self that is important to understand and know, because you can present an aspirational self, a fantasy self, a school self, a work self, a home self. And all of those things become important data points that we just aren't able to capture in traditional research methods. And so what I've seen from Black youth in Chicago in particular is that they're living their complex lives through social media. And I have to say this in the very beginning, is that in my work, I wasn't asking the right questions of social media. I had been imbibing my own ideas around white supremacy and Black kids, and I was only looking at threats and violence and aggression. But what became clear to me when I started to actually embed myself in that space is that I was missing so much of the lived realities of young Black youth, how they think about their city, how they connect with other people, what makes them angry, and what are the traumatic points that we need to understand in order to be able to better support them. That's what social media has allowed me to understand, and it's kind of brought me into this new space, and has broken down my own biases that I brought to the research space. Wow. So, yeah.
You know what I love in just you talking to the Crib community about it, about your process, about your journey, but also reading about it, is the honesty, the honest integrity that you publicly tell folks. I was asking the wrong questions. And so I went back and listened to the community to help guide the direction of the work. And that, I think that is, again, the epitome of a culturally responsive scholar, and indicative of a scholar that, again, has been called to do this work in service to the community, right? So I really appreciate you just being very honest about that, and how that sort of listening, made you almost pivot and shift and take a deeper dive that kind of opened up this huge realm of understanding of the process of Black youth.
I was slapped in the face.
Yeah.
Digitally.
You're like, don't say it eloquently. I was
slapped in the face. And you know what? I mean, I think another honest point is that you don't really get to do that as a Black scholar trying to navigate tenure at R1 institution.
I'm sorry, Desmond, can you say that?
You don't get to do it as a Black scholar navigating tenure. There are so many pressures on you to produce a particular type of research that doesn't fit your cultural norms or how you connect with your community.
That's right.
And so I got caught up in that. I started at Michigan. My world had been so much on this grind, this hustle. Let's get tenure. Let's get tenure. Let's do what it takes. And the Jakira Barnes, a deceased young girl from Chicago, her Twitter post slapped me in the face. It was like, what the hell are you doing? And it brought me to my knees, and I've had to just really sit with that. And I've been studying her since 2014, and I am still humbled by the words, the haunting messages that she and other people in her Twitter network have left that have really helped me to grow and to unleash these notions of white supremacy that drive our research from time to time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Desmond, I'm trying not to get sidetracked, but you're bringing up something that I think needs to be an episode at 3830. And it is about that tenure hustle, that academic space that Black scholars occupy. And I think people need to understand, like deeply understand, particularly given now. You know, you and I have been very candid dialoguing with each other over Twitter about, you know, how existing in, you know, two pandemics essentially, particularly given our research and who we are as Black people, how that is affecting us, but yet we are still required to do the work and still asked to show up even tenfold.
Absolutely.
But I digress. we only got 30 minutes, but Crip community, I need to hear a yay, a sign of hearts and big ups if that's something you're interested in talking about, because I sure am, and I know Desmond is and others are.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that gem of honesty and integrity. So you and I have been doing this work for a while, you know, focusing on the impact of homicide and interpersonal violence on the lives of Black people, paying particular attention to the traumatic impact and expression of grief.
Yeah.
As a result of chronic exposure to violent experiences. And in a blog post, you spoke about something that is critical to understanding the release of grief and pain and anger in its many forms for Black youth, protesting, interpersonal violence, etc. Specifically in your post, you stated that in your analysis of the expression, as you indicated here, of aggression among Black youth, rarely did we encounter a threatening post that wasn't attached to deep and complicated trauma. How are social media platforms hindering and helping Black youth's ability to cope with trauma as a result of these violent experiences?
Whew. Yeah, that has probably been the most earth-shattering finding in my work just for my own person. So what we learned as we were analyzing thousands and thousands of Twitter posts, and to be clear, we've been analyzing historical Twitter posts from young people in Chicago, and we would hire young people from the same communities from which the data came from to help us translate and interpret those posts, because we didn't know what the hell young people were saying online. And what we learned is a couple of things. Number one is that it's really important to make sure that you are interpreting the post correctly, or at least in the ballpark. And what would happen is that usually we would misinterpret signs of trauma and grief as aggression because we didn't know what young people were saying online. So the use of emoji and hashtag and African American vernacular English were all kind of combined in a way that you really had to be an expert, and an expert meaning from that community and perhaps even that block, to really understand those expressions. What we also learned is that young people were not joining social media to be aggressive. That oftentimes the young people from the South and West Side were using social media to process what they were seeing and going through online. And that would happen over and over and over again. And what we noticed is that there was a 2-day window between a post that was identified as being loss or trauma versus an aggressive post. So there was a window between those posts, but they were just sitting online. And number one, there was no one to actually help them process it. And when it sat online, it became fodder for a beef to happen. So if you were someone from a rival crew or gang or clique, and you saw that grief post, perhaps through wearing a shirt with the loved one's picture or name, then that became the very thing that would be attacked. And that would lead to another set of posts and back and forth, and then everyone wrapped into that network. That network would start to problematize your grief. And so you started off really just wanting some help and support, but then it went left. And then there's also no one to help you get back to center as well. There's a lot of things happening on social media, and it's like the wild, wild west. There are no digital social workers, no digital mental health practitioners to help process that space. So that's where I think the danger is. I think youth have the right idea that if you can find a space to get support and help, by all means do that. And if social media can be that place, okay. But the social media platforms have not anticipated the ways in which Black youth use social media, and they don't care. And they're not doing things to protect harmful speech at all in the first place.
Right.
Because it doesn't make you money.
Right. That part.
So yeah, it's so very complicated, but that's where I'm sitting at it.
But okay, so this is me pinging with like ideas. This is why you and I need to have a because you dropping several gems here. Like yes, okay, so learning teachable moment. Let me stay out of the realm of excitement for a moment, folks. You've heard many scholars on here talking about the importance of partnering, true partnerships with community to conduct research that is for them and with them. So again, thank you, production. Desmond has uplifted that importance of the work to this conversation. But there's something there, though. I don't know if you've begun to get it, because you say there's a 2-day window.
Yep.
Right? And you use this term, digital social workers, and perhaps then there is a pathway forward grounded in your research for us to develop interventions, for us to expand, the discipline, the training of social workers to be able to engage, particularly in the middle of COVID when all we doing is being online.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Okay.
And I think that there's what I'm really passionate about is working with community members to do that work.
Yes.
So yes, that's where we need to be.
So I'm thinking about because you and I have talked about, I'm thinking about the work of Safe Streets. It's the same concept essentially, but it's online.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay, see, I'm giving all the cookies away. All right, but we won't talk. Okay, so what trends are you seeing relevant to? Well, let me just kind of slide into the COVID situation. What trends are you seeing relevant to Black youth's use of social media to cope and respond to the violence they experienced during COVID, particularly? Because we all know and have seen the stats in terms of the fact that gun violence is either remaining the same in most cities or actually on the rise during COVID when we are social distancing, so forth and so on, X, Y, and Z. So what trends are you seeing relevant to how Black youth are responding to that in the middle of COVID? Are you seeing a difference or a spike or?
Yeah, I think what I've been chewing on is the power of narratives. And what social media offers Black folk is the ability to curate that narrative. And what I'm witnessing is Black folk telling their story, telling nuanced and robust and culturally rich stories about how they're processing this experience with COVID-19 and anti-Black racism all happening at the same time. They're expressing the deep challenges, the deep pain. They're pushing back against white narratives and white lies. They are working together to control the narrative in such a powerful way that I think should be harnessed for the election as well. And so I'm seeing a lot of beauty in these brilliant strategies, but I'm also seeing a lot of pain, right? Because you also have a lot of folks, in particular, I work with young people that have been home that have been, their families are dealing with a lot, and they're behind the keyboard and they're behind the screen. And the slightest things, as we know from trauma research, can put you in a different mindset and can lead to additional conversations and banter that we don't want to have as well. So both things are happening at the same time. But yet, in the media, we only have conversations and we only want to focus on the most negative attributes of social media communication. And I'm tired of that. I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that if you wait to capture the most aggressive communication on social media, you have waited too long, and that is not a strategy for prevention. It's not going to prevent anything because people have already brought you into their world. They're telling you, help, I need this, I need that. Let's talk, let's connect. But the only thing you want to focus on is the negative piece. That's problematic.
Yeah. Desmond, I am right there with you 150%. I remember when Freddie Gray was murdered, and I was asked to do a panel discussion, and I said, let's be clear. Let's be really, really clear and very careful about calling Black youth thugs and moms and so forth and so on. Because what you're seeing is centuries and decades of abuse and racism and grief and trauma that has gone unacknowledged. Yeah. Right? And so folks are crying out literally for help and assistance. Same thing over social media platforms. And it's not lost on me. Thank you, production. It's not lost on me that you talked about the fact that what is happening with Black youth on social media can be, and I quote, harvested for the upcoming election. So I'm just wondering if you can say a few things about your thoughts about that. That's just a question off of your comments.
I just think that I've seen some beautiful strategies of coping with harmful speech and with connecting people to resources and new ideas. And these strategies through memes and hashtags, through jokes, through the brilliance and beauty of Black identity, can be strategies for connecting Black folks to new ideas around the election. And I'm in all these meetings with, typically I'm the only Black person in that meeting, and they're trying to figure out misinformation and the election. I keep having to bring out, well, your strategy doesn't work for Black folk. That's not how we connect with each other. That's not how we talk to each other. And I want my grandmother to not be misinformed about how she should be voting. Yeah. She's not on social media, but someone can take a post from social media and come back and tell her, because she'll always say, Desmond, I heard on FaceTime that this was happening. I'm like, well, it's Facebook, Mama. And let me help you understand. But that's the work, right? That's the work we have to do to keep our families safe. Yeah.
Real talk.
Yeah.
I have two more questions, so I'm just gonna pick one.
Okay.
So government and law enforcement have increased interest in using artificial intelligence as a means of addressing gun violence, monitoring social media, for example. Can you tell us a bit about what the government and law enforcement are proposing / implementing, and what are the pros and cons of this?
So many of the strategies oftentimes include a third-party company that will use some form of machine learning or natural language processing to either track language via the text that you write on social media or the images that you place on social media, the videos. And so they can use things like computer vision to annotate guns and other images that might be in the video that they can then track over time. We also see entities where they create fake personas or fake personalities and engage you in entrapment for months and months on end, pretending to be a beautiful young woman, for example, in a way to catch you in something on social media as well. Wow. And what it's used for is evidence in a criminal situation, right? And it's used as negative character testimony that you did this or you experienced this or you said this without any context, without any interpretation, without any nuanced understanding of what's being said. And it is used in almost every major city and town in the US and globally. And yet we don't have any policies that actually are pushing up against this misinterpretation. We're seeing more headway with facial recognition systems. That's the thing that we are readily having conversations about.
Right.
But we're not having conversations about this social media surveillance and monitoring that can lead to mass incarceration. That's what I'm very worried about.
I read the article you posted about it, but when you break it down, that's a little... We have some work to do regarding policy with a quickness. Y'all, it's not a... I'm just asked the question. Okay. Because it's the closing question, the crescendo, if you will. And you just have fire. So, okay. How can we use social media platforms like Twitter, like Facebook, Instagram, etc., throughout research to inform policy and practice, specifically to help meet the needs of Black communities who disproportionately experience structural violence, homicide, and gun violence? How can we utilize it?
I think what we need to do is disrupt who gets to be at the table with developing and creating and integrating social media in our lives. And the reality is many folks that look like us are not at that table. Our communities are not represented. Our voices are not represented. Our needs are not represented. One of the things that I'm trying to do is to bring in more folks into this space. The reality is we are all technologists. You do not have to be a computer engineer, a software engineer, or any type of engineer, mathematician to be a technologist. You use social media and artificial intelligence every single day in your life, and your voice is needed to help create ethical and humane technology. So we need to start with inception. And then once we're there, then we can start to produce technologies that actually work for us and work for our communities. And so at Columbia, I started a UXR lab, a user research lab for formerly incarcerated citizens to help train them in technology. I run an AI for All summer program that brings Black, Latinx, and Indigenous youth to Columbia to learn social work and AI. And I also run a youth tech lab at the Brownsville Community Justice Center to help train them in user research as well. Our young people have brilliant ideas. Our future is so bright if we allow them to support and to help and to be support for them as well.
Uplifting the voices of so many who have the intellect, have the knowledge, have the insight, but just providing folks with a platform for a pathway forward. I'm gonna say this right now. You need to come back. We need to talk. We need to talk and brainstorm some ideas. I just wrote some stuff down as you were talking about synergy with our research agendas. But you need to come back to 3830 crib community. Is that correct? Do I hear it? Yeah, there's the hearts and the love for you, Dr. Patton, right there.
Thanks, folks.
Right there. Listen, I cannot thank you enough for agreeing to come on tonight. I'm going to be straight up with you because the crib community knows it the only way I can. I was feeling kind of down today, like just feeling the weight of everything. So the semester starting, meetings and us being asked to talk about anti-Black racism and, all of this. I was feeling heavy, and this just ignited me in such a way that I needed. So
I feel the energy. I feel the love. I'm so thankful that you have created this space for us, for all of us, to connect, to convene, to learn from each other. This is such a brilliant and beautiful space. And so thank you for this amazing space. I needed it too.
Yeah, I got you, my brother. I got you. I got you. So crib community, as always, until next week, from our crib to yours, stay safe and keep well. Good night.
Stop that. Stop that.